important moments in India's history. 1971, the war with Pakistan on the liberation of Bangladesh. Israel secretly sent arms as India prepared for the war. On the contrary, the OIC and the Arab League backed Pakistan morally and politically. Some even say that funds were provided to Pakistan and not a statement was made against Pakistan's dehumanizing actions in Bangladesh, the war crimes it committed on the innocent people of Bangladesh. Again, viewers, 1971, Israel diverted arms to India despite facing shortage. Remember, viewers, remember this, that Iran was itself combating Israel at that time. And Golda Meir, the then Prime Minister, said, no, we will divert some of those munitions that are needed for our own self-defense for our Indian brothers and sisters. That was an act of unqualified, unconditional magnanimity because till then, India hadn't recognized the state of Israel. There were no diplomatic ties. On the other hand, Iran signed a secret pact with Pakistan to provide air cover to Karachi. At that time, viewers, though luckily Iran reneged at the last moment, seeing which way the war was going. In 2008, Israel backed India's stand on 26/11 unequivocally. It was also a fellow sufferer in the devastating 26/11 attacks. However, the OIC described 26/11 as a mere incident. Viewers, as a mere incident. In 2023, Israel considers Jammu and Kashmir an integral part of India. And look at Saudi Arabia. It supported the fight for dignity in Jammu and Kashmir. Israel considers Jammu and Kashmir, remember, an integral part of India. The OIC demands India reverse actions in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. For it is a disputed territory. And who is a member of the OIC? Palestine. And India was the first state to recognize Palestine. Palestine considers Jammu and Kashmir to be an occupied land, viewers. There we have it. It's all very one way. And today, when the Prime Minister stands up unequivocally for Israel, he is asked to balance his views. To suit whom? These individuals who've stabbed India in its back at the first sign of crisis? Think about it, viewers. I'll open this up. And I want to begin first with Dr. I.N.D.I.A Ranganathan. We also have with us strategic expert Brahma Cheleni, Mr. Sudhindra Kulkarni, who served, of course, in the I.N.D.I.A administration of Mr. Vajpayee. And his view, as he is explained in an article recently, is that Modi must condemn, of course, very right to have done so, the Hamas, but also Netanyahu and his government, the Israeli government. We also have Faisal Babu, General Secretary of the MYL. Now, let me come across to you, Dr. Ranganathan, first, as we bring all our guests on the screen. Dr. Ranganathan, think of Arab sentiments, balance it all out. You know, on Twitter, it's called monkey balancing. The opposition is sitting, and excuse the pun, on the Gaza-Israel fence at this moment, when Israel, there is documented evidence, has faced human rights violations on its own soil. Now, I don't need to go over the tawdry details of what the Hamas has done. How do you view this misplaced sentimentality for some long gone Arab-India détente?
Good evening, Rahul. Look, I'm not surprised by it. The fact of the matter is that the only thing worse than those horrifying videos and reports of Israelis being butchered and the babies and those rapes, and it's gut-wrenching, that butchering by terrorists. The only thing worse than that are the visuals of Indians supporting Hamas and trying to balance out these atrocities as some sort of just revenge. Rahul, reams are being written and reels are being recorded on the current Gaza war, and they will be repeated ad nauseum when more such wars happen, as they are sure to. Should we analyze what is happening? Or why is it happening? The fact of the matter is that the Arab-Israeli problem is not as old as 1948. Just like the India-Pakistan problem is not as old as 1947. These problems are exactly 1391 years old. For that is when the Jews and the polytheists and the non-believers were othered and marked and stamped. Rahul, peace of mind was fought over much before peace of land. You think the Hamas charter that says that the day of judgment will not come until Muslims fight Jews and kill them, do you think that charter took birth only in 1988? Rahul, there was no Israel before 1948. So why was it that the real nudge to Hitler for exterminating Jews was given by Muslims? Was there a land dispute then? No. And this is where we can analyze and reach nowhere until we address the genesis of the problem. Rahul, Israel has given up voluntarily land that belonged to Egypt, to Syria, to Jordan, to Palestine. Why would an evil force do that? Truth is, there is sanction to kill, abuse, persecute Jews, and unless we address this, the hatred is not going to go away. Have you ever wondered that a small sliver of land surrounded by the richest, the wealthiest nations in the world, the Arab states, remains the poorest when the same nations have converted deserts into Dubai? And yet, Gaza remains the poorest, filthiest, sickest, most dangerous of places in the world. Why? Because they want to keep playing the victim card. Just like after they start the violence, kill Jews, they march down their dead killed in retaliatory Israeli action to show the world that Israel is the oppressor. They project Gaza as an open-air prison gutter because of Israel made it so. They care more about denigrating and embarrassing Israel than about developing Palestine. Rahul, the preamble of the charter of Hamas that says Israel will continue to exist until Islam obliterates it, just as it obliterated others before it, is based on fundamentals. The contempt for non-Muslims is real and defiling and absolute in Islam. For how long will we blink our eyes to it? Do not take disbelievers as friends unless they convert and kill them if they refuse 489. And among the non-believers of Islam, Jews have been specially condemned, called the worst of creatures, condemned to hellfire, called apes, led by Satan, called pigs, eternally cursed. Finally, Rahul, just 30 seconds about this widespread execrable support for Hamas actions here in India. Well, I've said this before. Tera mera rishta kya, la ilaha illallah. Indian Muslims who have never marched demanding rehabilitation of 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus, victims of genocide living in exile, are not only marching now in support of Palestinians and Hamas, but also marched and rioted in Azad Maidan demanding India rehabilitate Rohingya Muslims. But then again, finally to finish, I ask a simple question. What made Ambedkar write about Islam in the manner that he did? Was he Islamophobic? Was he Sanghi? Was he a right-winger? Why then did he say that Muslims are a separate nations, that they have contempt and enmity against non-Muslims, that Islam is incompatible with local government, that a true Muslim can never regard non-Islamic land as his mother country? Why did Ambedkar say this? Rahul, why are we trying to solve a millennia-old problem without analyzing why the problem exists? It simply cannot be cured.
Well, let me bring in Mr. Kulkarni. Those were very frank words by Dr. Ranganathan, and I think that at one level he is speaking directly after reading the Hamas charter. Now, Mr. Kulkarni, imagine had the Hamas succeeded, had for some reason, hypothetical reason, all the Israeli soldiers, supposing they had been completely caught off guard because they had taken sleeping pills or something, what do you think would have happened in Israel? Would we not have seen a Holocaust of the kind that took place some 75 years ago? I want to ask you, why should at this time we hyphenate Israel and Palestine and, of course, Palestinians who have elected Hamas that rules Gaza, especially after what the Hamas stands for? The charter is on the screen. Israel, Judaism, Jews challenge Islam and the Muslim people. May the cowards never sleep. Israel will exist and continue to exist. This is the preface of the chapter, until Islam obliterate just that, as it obliterated others before it. Article 7 is even worse. It quotes straight out of a hadith. Why romanticize Palestinian struggle when Palestinians have elected the Hamas that is anti-Semitic and wants Islam to obliterate Jews, sir? It's a simple question to you.
Let me begin by unequivocally condemning the terror attack by Hamas on mostly innocent, unarmed civilian Israelis, killing nearly 1,000 people. This is an act of terror, and they stand condemned in the court of God as well, of course, in the court of man. There can be absolutely no justification, rationalization, of course, support for what Hamas has done. But your entire introduction to this discussion has been so one-sided, Rahul, that it is absolutely pathetic and condemnable. There are two sides to what is happening in Gaza right now. You did not show a single visual of carpet bombing of Gaza Strip by the Israeli army, in which more people are being killed, more people are being injured, more children are being slaughtered, more homes are being flattened, and where in a territory that had already been converted into the world's largest open-air prison. None other than the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said 2 years ago, well before the recent Hamas terror attack, that if there is any hell on earth, it is Gaza Strip and the lives of the children in Gaza. You did not show a single visual. You did not show that the Israeli defense minister has called all Palestinians as human animals and are to be treated as such. Now, this is not a recent conflict. It has a history. And all the great personalities of India, both on this side of the political spectrum and that side of the political spectrum, have unanimously held that for the problem to be solved, Israel must vacate the land that it has illegally occupied. Let me begin by quoting Pandit Deen-Dayal Upadhyay. Why Pandit Deen-Dayal Upadhyay? Because he is now, even today, he was of course the organizer and the ideologue and the philosopher of the Bharatiya Janasangh. But even today, the BJP regards him as its ideological guru. Now, way back in 1967, after the first Arab-Israel war, he said that let us not blindly become let's not blindly become pro-Israel just because the Congress is blindly pro-Arab. There are no devils and angels in this conflict. We must judge every issue on its merit. This was Pandit Deen-Dayal Upadhyay. And I'm taking his name especially because today there are so many BJP supporters who don't know history. This was 1967. Come to 1977. I wish you had shown that 1.5 minute clip of Atal Bihari Vajpayee when he became India's External Affairs Minister in Morarji Bhai's government, where he categorically says that for peace in Israel and in Palestine, Israel must vacate the land that it has illegally occupied. And he says, of course, that Israel has a right to exist, just as Palestinians have a right to exist in a free, independent nation.
Right.
This was Deen-Dayal Upadhyay as well as Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Okay.
Please show his clip,
Okay.
For the edification of yourself and for the people of, all the viewers of your channel. Now, let me come to Prime Minister Modi himself. He in 2018, he paid a visit to Israel, but he also made it a point to go to West Bank, and he met the president of Palestinian Authority and said that we wish that Palestinians have an independent state soon. Now, this has been consistent policy of India, and even on the other side, from Mahatma Gandhi, from Nehru, Indira Gandhi, all of them have consistently said that the only solution, lasting solution to this problem is a two-state solution.
Right.
That is an independent, safe, secure Israel, an independent, safe, secure Palestine living together as good neighbors. But for this to happen, the United Nations has categorically said in numerous resolutions that Israel should go back to the pre-1967 borders and make East Jerusalem the capital of Palestine. This is the unanimous view of majority countries in the world.
Okay.
And you think that this is monkey balancing? You are really guilty of distorting truth, Rahul.
Okay.
You are doing grave injustice to the hapless people of Palestine in Gaza Strip.
Okay.
Rahul,
If you have any respect for truth,
have you finished, sir, now?
Condemn both Netanyahu and his savage destruction of Gaza Strip and the deaths of innocent people in Gaza.
Had I been guilty of distorting truth, I would not have allowed you to speak on and on and on, criticizing me, sir. You were brought on the show.
No, you have invited me. I can go right now.
Allow me,
I don't have to be on this show.
Allow me, sir. Don't get
so
worked up. Why are you getting
biased.
worked up? Why are you getting worked up? Calm down. Let's not get worked up. Let's be calm.
Let's be calm. You have called me here.
I said so. I said that I've invited you and allowed you to speak. Had I wanted to distort the truth, I would not have allowed you to speak. And I perhaps would have said at the first instance, please leave the show, but I haven't. You're very much part of this show. You've been given uninterrupted time, sir, to make your point. I just want to quickly tell you a few things since you brought it to my attention. First of all, we don't know how many casualties have taken place in Gaza of babies, as you are suggesting, sir. Let me finish now, sir. Let me just finish because I gave you uninterrupted time.
The United Nations on record said
you have,
2007,
you have unspooled.
Palestinians have been killed.
Okay, sir. If you're not going to allow me to speak, then what is the point? You were talking about this particular Israeli counter-offensive. You said that you have not shown any pictures of the counter-offensive. Those pictures have been running on your screens. Maybe you have not paid attention to the screen. Number one, there it is. You can see it. It's all there for you to watch. Number two, sir. Number two, we don't know how many civilians are dead in Gaza right now. We don't have information. I want to also make it very clear that the Hamas has located all its headquarters, etc. It's a cowardly organization that has done so in populated regions. It takes human shields. Number three, I want to make it very clear that if you are talking about the root cause argument, as some people do on a day like this, when information of babies having been slaughtered, Israeli babies having been slaughtered in their little beds by the Hamas is coming out, then, sir, I want to ask you, would you stand with all of those who during the 26/11 attack said India deserved it because they have not addressed the root cause in Kashmir? Will you respond very quickly to that before I bring in Brahma Chileni?
Absolutely. Since you mentioned Kashmir,
I'm asking you, sir, would you use the root cause argument on that day when 26/11 happened? Would you stand there and say 26/11 happened because the root cause, which is the Kashmir issue, has not been addressed, so India should welcome the fact that it has been overrun by terrorists from across the border? Simple question, sir.
Absolutely not.
You would not have. That is exactly what the Prime Minister has done. He has not hyphenated an incident to monkey balance, and I will use that word again. Let me bring in Mr. Chileni. Let me bring in Mr. Chileni.
To respond to your question.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
India very rightly says
yes,
that since Pakistan has illegally occupied POK, it must
Yes.
vacate. This is 1947.
Sir, the
Since
Pakistanis
1967,
claim, so do the
Israel
Arab League and the
illegally occupied
OIC, that we are in
Palestinian land.
illegal
How did he
occupation of
become
Jammu and Kashmir. Are we in illegal occupation of Jammu and Kashmir? Because
is
that's
he?
what the OIC says. Yes or no? Tell me, Mr. Kulkarni. Are we?
No,
Yes or no? Do you
I
agree?
didn't hear your question.
The Palestine, which is part of the OIC, says that we are in illegal occupation of Jammu and Kashmir. Are we, sir?
I absolutely disapprove of what
There you
OIC is
go.
saying on Kashmir.
There you go. There you go.
Categorically.
And who is part of the OIC? It's Palestine. Viewers, Palestine is a member, voting member of the OIC. And are we supposed to today, viewers, on a day when Israel has been brutalized and its people have been brutalized, sit there and say, no, there is a root cause. And therefore there is a justification. No, viewers. We have dehyphenated, just like we have dehyphenated our relationship with Pakistan and our other allies. India has decided to dehyphenate its relationship with Israel and the Middle East. Mr. Brahmacharyan, how would you respond to the likes of Mr. Kulkarni, who want us to, in the same breath, also excoriate Israel?
Rahul, I think the first thing we should bear in mind that what has happened is unprecedented. Never before in human history has an organization carried out a terrorist operation on the scale that the Hamas has done. It is like as if this is not a terrorist militia, but a state that has launched a full-fledged military offensive. It invaded Israel from at least 22 points. And even today, despite several days of non-stop Israeli bombing of Gaza, the Hamas is still firing rockets into Israel. The scale and sophistication of Hamas's terror offensive could embolden the Pakistan-based terrorist groups that are in front of the ISI. So whatever is happening between Israel and Hamas carries serious implications for India. Will the Pakistan-based groups now be emboldened to carry out some spectacular attacks against India? After all, they enjoy state support. They are proxies of the Pakistan military establishment. And we tend to focus often on preventing a repeat of what happened in the past. For example, after the Mumbai attacks, all hotels in India have a special security before you can enter that hotel. But we're trying to prevent a repeat of the last attack, instead of looking ahead as to how terrorists are likely to innovate and come up with new means for attack. And I think the biggest lesson from Hamas's terror offensive is that you have to keep the state sponsors of terror under sustained pressure. You have to impose sustained costs on the state sponsors of terrorism. Israel failed to do that. Qatar, for example, provided more than $1 billion over a 10-year period to Hamas. Iran was providing military training to Hamas. And I think the lesson for India is that you cannot have normal relations with Pakistan because Pakistan is orchestrating terrorism against India. As a state sponsor of terrorism, Pakistan will have to be put under sustained Indian pressure. That is the fundamental lesson for India.
Well, there you go. There you go. Viewers, there's a fundamental question that has been raised, and I want to bring in Dr. Ranganathan before we also bring in Israel's Consul General to the south of India, Tammy Ben-Haim, onto the show. Because people are obviously questioning whether Israel has an onus to bear for what has happened on its own soil. So, Dr. Ranganathan, let me ask you, we've all read our history books, unlike what some people claim. Have the Palestinians been equally committed to peace, especially those that have voted the Hamas?
Rahul, first of all, I'm very astonished and I really admire, hats off to your patience to having to sit through and listen through the diatribe of one of the panelists. Is shocking. I would have thought if one is employed, then yes, you can be accused for not reading history books. But if you're unemployed, then you have all the time in the world to at least read up before you come for a discussion. This same Hamas was voted democratically by the Palestinians. They are not separate. The West Bank and Gaza have not been invaded by Hamas. Israel has. And the fact of the matter is, if this gentleman is saying what Vajpayee said, what Deen-Dayal Upadhyaya said, well, I don't agree with what they said. Or what they said at that point of time 40 years ago is very different the situation right now. Should I also believe that Advani said that Jinnah is secular? While this gentleman was a friend of Advani? I don't believe that. Maybe he still does. Maybe he believes Jinnah is actually secular. Look, the fact of the matter is, it's plain and simple. Who caused this massacre? Who caused this atrocity? If in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, the innocent Palestinians are being killed by Israeli retaliation, who actually is responsible?
Yes.
Who is keeping them as human shields? Who has abducted old Palestinian women and children in godowns that are stocked with weapons, bombs and rockets? Who? And what is the other side? What is this balancing BS somebody is talking about? What is the other side of the Holocaust? Should we tell that Hitler was also a watercolor painter? What kind of logic is this? And finally, Rahul, I want to ask a very important question. Kassab, he perpetrated terror on our soil. Let us assume, after doing that, after killing 500 innocent Indians, he goes and hides in a sleeper cell or a place where he has refuge and uses that refuge as a human shield. Does this gentleman believe that we cannot take out Kassab, even if he's planning further terror attacks? Is that the logic of combating terrorism? And this gentleman was one of the most prominent voices in some erstwhile government. Heaven help us, honestly.
Let me tell you, viewers, Hamas has betrayed those Palestinians that didn't vote for it, because those Palestinians knew that Hamas would lead them to this. But there are Palestinians who voted for Hamas. And that same Hamas refuses to negotiate any peaceful settlement on any of the issues with Israel. That is not Israel's fault, viewers. I want to bring in Israeli diplomat, the Consul General, South India, to India, Tami Ben-Haim. First of all, our condolences. What a tragedy, what an assault on human rights has played out in Israel over the last few days. We're sorry to see those scenes. We also saw pictures of a nursery where little babies might have been sleeping and they were brutalized. But there are still many people who say that when the Indian government has unequivocally condemned terror, and when it has come out and supported Israel, the Prime Minister of our country should have also criticized your Prime Minister for all the attempts at not negotiating a peaceful solution. How do you respond to those people?
First, thank you very, very much for having me here and taking the time to discuss this. And first and foremost, again, let me say the unequivocal condemnation of Prime Minister Modi and the Indian government of this heinous terror attack, and the very clear standing with Israel in its fight for security, for survival, and against terrorism means a lot to us and is very, very important for us to hear. And also the two prime ministers, Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi, had a talk yesterday with updates and other issues that were raised. So first and foremost, definitely the support that we're getting, the wide support we're getting from India, as well as, of course, from the United States, many countries in Europe and South America, basically from all over the world, helps us maintain our strength, helps us keep our resolve and know what we're fighting for. We're fighting for our home, and we're fighting against terror organization. Now, secondly, Hamas, negotiations or not negotiations throughout the years have been with the Palestinian Authority, with President Mahmoud Abbas, with his predecessors, etc. Hamas is controlling Gaza since 2007. Hamas is an internationally recognized terror organization. There's no issue here of discussion of peace, of negotiations, of going to the table. It's a whole different issue, and people who are trying to rationalize it or tie these things together are simply in the wrong.
Simply in the wrong. Let me ask you, the charge is very particular, that Israel hasn't walked the peace talk, that you reneged on agreements, you could have given a lot more to the Gazians. That's the accusation. How do you respond to that?
Israel has given Gaza its own, has left Gaza. In 2005, Israel took its military out of Gaza, took the citizens, the Israeli citizens who were living there out of Gaza. We dismantled the synagogues, the Jewish temples. We dismantled Jewish cemeteries, burial grounds, and took them out of Gaza. We left Gaza completely alone. And initially, and I know my predecessor, I heard a little bit talk about it, in 2006, internal elections happened in the Palestinian Authority, and then Gaza also used force. They killed some of the Fatah ministers, and they took over Gaza. But so from 2007, there's, I wouldn't call it a government, but Hamas is controlling Gaza. They could have done many things in that place that is by the sea and has a population of almost 2 million. They could have invested in infrastructure, in schools, in healthcare. They got a lot of money from the international community in order to do that. But Hamas, being a terror organization, and saying to everybody, and for many years, what their aim is. The aim of Hamas is to destroy Israel. The aim of Hamas is to kill, murder, massacre, and we've seen it in the past few days, Israelis and Jews. They never wavered from it. So I'm not even talking about the direct support they got from the regime in Iran, which also calls for the destruction of Israel. The funding, the weapons, the training, the infrastructure, the money. So they got this directly from Iran, but they also used the money they got from the international community. Instead of investing it in the people in the Gaza Strip, they went solely or almost solely for building infrastructure, for training of going into Israel, for building these terror tunnels by which they use some of them to attack the civilians that they've attacked since Saturday morning.
Well, let me tell you, viewers, Jordan and Egypt both did not want any engagement with Hamas. In fact, Egypt sealed its border in the south of the Gaza Strip to prevent the Hamas from carrying out gun running, drug running, and other smuggling activities through underground tunnels. They were financed by other Middle Eastern powers, given lots of money, but they blew it up in this fashion. And they have consistently taken Israelis hostages and provoked Israel remarkably number of times. And there has been no such Israeli brutality committed where Gazians, innocent Gazians, have been pulled out and taken hostage for negotiations. And let me also tell you, viewers, in some of the kibbutz, a large number of Israeli families have actually employed Gazians to do all sorts of work. A large number of Gazians come into Israel to work, to earn honest livelihoods. All of that will now stop because of this terror organization, the Hamas. And there are people in this country that still want us to, viewers, sit on the fence. I don't know if terror can ever be balanced. I'll take a short break.